Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University.
Hello my dear friends, welcome to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad in Chaitanya studio of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University, Ahmedabad. Today we discuss and deal with the subject of economics in the course BBA. It is a very good and very enhancing subject where each and every person with regarding to whether it is the field of commerce, arts or science, they have to study this. Whenever we talks about the economics, so first question in our mind, sir, what are that learning objective with respect to this particular subject? So here there are few learning objectives, my dear friends. First, let us discuss the meaning and definition of economics. Then difference between the micro and macroeconomics. It's ultimately defined, my dear friends, that is a types of economics. Then various problem of economy. Then basic terms of economics, and then specialized branch of economic studies. Now let's begin our journey with the introduction of economics. The science of economics is not a very old. If we talk about this particular subject in 10th to 8th century, and when we are talking about that the Chandragupta Maurya's time, the economic enhanced at that particular stage. And thus we can say that the science of economics is not a very old. In fact, its genesis that came traced in the 1776 when the Adam Smith's book, An Inquiry into the Nature and the Cause of the Wealth of Nation was published. And according to that, Adam Smith is the father of economy. And however, with the extension of horizons of the human knowledge and with the increase as a human activity, its scope of considerably increased in nature. And over the period of time, it will be the what, my dear friends, increase in nature. And thus we can find what are the economics and what are the importance of that economics. If we are talking about that economic concerns decisions, and since the decisions are to be constantly made in all the fields of economy, or we can say the human endeavor, there is no aspect of human life that is not touched by economics. Economics is the social science studying the production, distribution and the consumption of goods and services, etc. Economics is a complex social science and span from the mathematics to psychology, we can say that. And it is the most basic, and however the economic consider how a society provide for its need. It is most basic need to be the survive, and which requires the food, clothing and shelter. These three are the important and the basic necessity for a person, or we can say the human being or human endeavor. Then once those are covered, it can then the focus on the sophisticated commodities such as the services, personal transport, entertainment, the list of goes on, my dear friends. And today the social science known as economics, which refers only to the type of economic thought which politically economists refer to as, we can say, the non-classical or the neoclassical economics. So in development of the 18th century, based on the idea of that economics can be analyzed mathematically and scientifically, the other schools are the thought have to included in the classical as well as the modern political economy. And when we are talking about that the Marxist economy and the institutional economy, the Keynesian economy, and these all have, my dear friends, different emphasis on certain aspects of economics. Then we move further to the definition of economics. There are the several economists gave their definition according to their knowledge, according to that nature. So we have to deal with all the definition and respect the definition, my dear friends. It's very important while you evaluating economics in a present scenario with respect to any economic problem. Let us start the definition of economics. Most economists agrees with the view that defining the economic is necessary as it becomes possible to study a subject and, my dear friends, known it scientifically and properly. The Nobel laureates, the Professor Samuelsons, observe that I, the beginner, often want a short definition of economics, and response to this demand, there is no shortage of supply. These words from the Samuelson. Now, in order to facilitate the study, definition of economics have been broadly divided into the four category, or we can say the four parts. The first part is, my dear friends, the wealth definition. Second definition according to the welfare definition. And third definition, there is a scarcity definition. This is one of the best definition ever in the economic subject. Then growth oriented definition. Now what you define that? Sir, these are the four parts, or we can say that the definition defined in this four part, then the who gave the definition. So my dear friends, wealth definition given by the Adam Smith, welfare definition given by the Marshall, scarcity definition given by the Robinsons, and the growth oriented definition given by the Samuelson. Now let's talk about the Adam Smith definition, that is a wealth definition defined in 1776, my dear friends. The Adam Smith, known as the father of economic science, wrote his book Wealth of Nation in 1776. According to him, it is an inquiry into the nature and causes of a wealth of the nation. My dear friends, remember this numerous, and we can say the wildest the words. That is a definition that what the definitions gave, that it is an inquiry into the nature and cause of the wealth of the nation. And this definition's challenge, or we can say the treated as, so this definition would treat the economics as a science of earning and spending the wealth. So we can say that according to the accounts, revenue as well as the expenses. If the revenue is not considered, then the expense is also not considerable in a nature. Yes or no, my dear friends? So this is what, my dear friends, defined that the science of earning as well as, my dear friends, spending. Now, the J.S. Mill later on defined that the economics as it's the practical science of the production and distribution of the wealth. And even though the production and distribution from the important problems of economics, the major attention is focused on the problems of price determination. Now discuss about that what are that features and criticism of this particular definition, my dear friends. So first feature is that the economics is the study of wealth only. Then it is a nature or meaning of wealth. Then it deals with the cause of wealth, and it takes it into the consideration of economic man. So these are the features where we define that the wealth definition. So ultimately this definition is only dealt with the, my dear friends, wealth only. Next, the criticism is defined that the more emphasis on a wealth, then a narrow meaning of wealth, then the concept concerned only with the economic wealth, then a neglect of a welfare, then a neglect of the problem of the scarcity and choices, then neglect of a means to attain the wealth. So these are the criticism of this particular definition. Let's move to the another definition that called the Marshall's definition on the welfare definition in 1890. Later on, Dr. Alfred Marshall in his Principle of Economics in 1890 treated the economics as a study of a mankind in ordinary business of a life, and then went on to say the economics examine that part of the individual and the social action connected with the attainment of the material requisite of well-being. So Marshall's definition ultimately treats that the economics as a study of a wealth on one side and part of the study of man on the other. But more important side is what, my dear friends, that is on the man side. So the Marshall gives the more important place to the man in economics. So Marshall's definition stress the material welfare activities as a subject matter of economics. It is the true that material well-being is important for a man in his everyday life. How does he earn and spend his money? How does the money affect his way of life and his outlook of life? So my dear friend, this definition truly stresses that the economics is a social science. It studies the behavior of a man as the buyer and seller, producer, consumer, employer, employee, the saver, investors, etc. And however, the economics is more than what the Marshall's definition includes. Economics cover all activities, whether the material or otherwise, humanity in earning and spending the problems, my dear friends. Now let us examine the features of this definition. So it is the importance of the study of a man, because this definition emphasizes and the focused on the only the man materialistic world. So the importance of the study of the man, then study of a social man, ordinary business of life, study of real man, material requisite, welfare, science and art, classificatory, and the money is the measure of the material welfare. While we discuss the feature, next examine the what are that criticism in a nature. So it's regarding the ordinary business of life. It's had the limited scope, uncertainty, the concept of welfare. Then economics is a human science, my dear friend, because my dear friend, this definition deals with the man. So economics is the human science. Then economics is only a positive science. It is not a normative science, and it's impractical in a nature. So this is what, my dear friends, there are the two definitions given by the first by the Adam Smith and second is a Marshall. Now let's move to the another definition called the Robinson definition, the scarcity definition of 1939. The famous modern definition of the Leon and the Robbins threw the light on the subject matter of the economics. He has widened the scope of economics as a science. Economics is the study of the problem of choice which arises due to the scarcity of the resources in relation to, my dear friend, the unlimited wants. These words are the important, my dear friends, that economics is a study of problem of choice which arises due to the scarcity of resources in relation to the unlimited wants. And according to the Lord Robinson's, economics is a science which study the human behavior as a relationship between the ends and scarce, means which have the alternative uses. He has stated that this in his book, that an essay on the nature and the significance of economic science in 1939, that no doubt human wants are unlimited, where the resources or a means to satisfy them scarce. So the wants are unlimited and the desire is unlimited, but for the satisfactory option, that resources, my dear friends, are very scarce, and that's why this problem making the best use of the scarce, and that's why this definition known as a scarcity definition of Robinson's definition. Let us examine the features of this definition, that is unlimited wants or ends. Then limited or scarce means, that is ultimately the resources are the scarce. Then the alternative use of means, that is we have the alternative use of the resources, like if we don't have a tea, then we drink the coffee. So we have the different alternative, different choice according to, so we can consume it in a nature. So the resources are scarce. And when your wants are the end, then wants are the unlimited. At that point of time, my dear friends, resources, you have to utilize your resources in according to that way. So say for example, if you don't have the tea, then move for the coffee or some soft drink. Then the wants differ in a urgency. Then economic problems are also arise. Then opportunity cost is one of the base problem over there. Next is the criticism of that. Then ignores the social aspect of economic activity. Economics is not as a natural with respect to the end. Then conceal the concept of welfare. It's a very wide scope of the welfare, or we can say the very wide scope of the economics. Then not only to the positive science, then division of the personality, then impractical. Its scarcity is not the cause of economic problem. Then study of statistic conditions, then no fully applicable to reach the countries, then non-applicable under development countries, not applicable to the centrally planned economics, then complex and abstract, and use of the word means and ends. So my dear friends, here what we learn and what we define according to this definition. There is a definition which required the wants of human beings are unlimited in nature. And for that, the wants are, or we can say the resources, means are very less. So when we are concluding with that 2 points, that is the resources as well as the human wants, both are not at a simple, or we can say the parable in nature. And for that, my dear friends, the Robinsons give this definition, that the scarcity of definition, where the human wants are unlimited and the resources are very scarce in nature. And according to that, we have to criticize this nature, and for that, the next definition came into force in 1970, that the Samuelson definition, that is a growth-oriented definition. The Nobel Prize winner, Professor Samuelson, defines the economics as follows, that the economics is the study of how people and the society end up choosing with or without the use of money to employ the scarce productive resources that could have alternative uses, and it produce the various commodities over the time and distribute them for the consumption level now or in a future among the various person and the groups in a society. It analyzes cost and the benefit of improving pattern of resources are allocated, or we can say the allocations are there. Now when we define that the feature and the merits, or we can say the criticism over there, the first features is that the economic resources in nature, then efficient allocation of resources, then full utilization of what, my dear friend, resources, then increase in resources, and when we are talking about that the merits, then realistic explanation in economic problems. It is a science as well as art. Then the no neutral with the we can say the respect of ends, that is the resources, we can say the wants. Then practical approach are there. It's a dynamic in a nature. Then it's a universal in a nature, my dear friends. So these are the merits with respect to this definition and the features with respect to this definition. Let's move to the another point, that is the scope of economics. As noted the above, the scope of economics is not marked precisely and as it appears. It cannot be marked as such. However, the scope of economics as it is known today has expanded vastly in the post-World War II period. And the modern economics is now divided into the two major branch, which is called as a microeconomics as well as the macroeconomics. So we can say that the scope is widely defined according to the modern economics into the two categories or the two parts, that is a microeconomics as well as the, my dear friends, the macroeconomics. So now in your mindset, sir, what is that the microeconomics and what are that the macroeconomics? Is there any efficiency? Is there any definition? So yes, my dear friend, this will study in a deep way, in a depth way in the next session. But here just I give the brief introduction with respect to the micro as well as the macroeconomics. Now let's begin the discussion of the microeconomics. The microeconomics is concerned with the microscopic study of various elements of the economic system and not with the system as a whole. So ultimately, my dear friends, this deal with the only the few elements, not with the whole. And thus it is not the system of as a whole. And later we can say then, as a learner says that the economist called name the learner, the microeconomics consists of looking into the economic through the microscope, as it were, to see how the millions of cells in the body economic, the individuals or household as a consumer, and the individuals or firms as a producers play their part in their working of the whole economic organism. And thus the microeconomics is the study of the economic behavior of individual consumer and producer and of individual economic variable. That is nothing but, my dear friends, production and pricing of individual goods and services. So this is what defined that, my dear friends, that is a microeconomics in a nature, which are the mainly consist with that part with the definition where, and we can say that this not define the whole economic system, it's defined just a little part where we can say that and we can evaluate in a mathematical format also. So it is treated as what, my dear friends, that is a microeconomics. Next is, my dear friend, macroeconomics. The macroeconomics is relatively the new branch of economics, and it was only after the publications of the Keynes's The General Theory of Employment, Interest and the Money in 1936 that macroeconomics crystallized as a separate branch of economics. It is not deal with the an executed, or we can say that in a common economics. It is the differentiate the branch. It has the own power. So we can say that the macroeconomics studied the working and performance of the economics as a whole. Say for example, if we deal with the we can say the unemployment or poverty, then which section is considered, whether micro or macro? Tell me, my dear friends, macro or micro? It's a macro. And when we are talking about the consumer's behavior on a particular product, then it studied the microeconomics. So there are ultimate, what, my dear friends, two different approaches are there that we can call as the micro is a small and macro as a whole, that is a big. Yes or no? So it analyzes the behavior of the national aggregates, including, my dear friends, national income, aggregate consumption, savings, investment, total employment, the general price level, and country's balance of payment. And when we are talking about the different economists, then according to the bounding, the macroeconomics is the study of the nature, relationship and behavior of aggregates and average of the economic qualities, or we can say the quantities in a nature. So this definition, or we can say this scope, is specifically given that the scope is derived from the two aspects, or we can say in the two parts. That is nothing but, my dear friends, what? First is a microeconomics and second is a macroeconomics. economics. Yes or no? Are you aware that? If we are talking about the price level, or we can say the consumer behavior, market structure. So market structure and poverty and the unemployment, this three, can you can categorize this three. The first is a market structure, second is a poverty, and third is unemployment. Yes or no? So the micro, or we can say the market structure, is ultimately defined in which section, my dear friends? That is in a micro. Then we are talking about the poverty and unemployment. So in a macroeconomics. So it's clearly significant that you have to use these two types of economics in a nature. Or we can say that the scope of the economics majorly divided into that two parts, that is microeconomics as well as the macroeconomics. So the scope of economics is a very vast, and it may be added here that in the addition to subject matter mentioned that above, that is a micro and macroeconomics, the economics provide a logic, reasoning, and the tools and the techniques and the analytical framework to analyze the economic phenomena and to predict the consequences of change in economic conditions. And it may thus be concluded that economics as a science of this study, or we can say the science study conditions, or science study, we can say the economic behavior of the people and its consequences at the both level, that is a micro level as well as macro level, and it bring out the cause and the effect relationship between the economics event, provide the tools and techniques of the analyzing economic phenomena and basis of predicting the consequences economic decisions and different economics event. When then the economic studies the economics phenomena systematically and mathematically, or we can say the methodologically, the scientific method of economic inquiry attributing, or we can say the attributes, the status of a highest branch of understanding to the economics. So these are the scope of the micro and macroeconomy, or we can say the economical scope. Now with respect to that, my dear friends, you have to evaluate yourself whether you studied this session or whether you watched this session efficiently or not. Then you have to deal with these three aspects. The first aspect, that you write the long question, second is the short question writing, and third is to evaluate this multiple choice question. And then, my dear friends, if you refer more, or you can refer the more, or we can say that you referring the different books you want to study further, then you referring the deficient, or we can say the definite books over there. The first long question, or we can say the first aspect of your evaluation process, that is the long question, and in that the first question is that describe the feature and criticism of the Robinson's definition of the economics, that is a scarcity definition 1939. Then second question is that describe the scope of economics, my dear friends. Then we deal with the second aspect, that is the short questions. Then the question 1 is define the Alfred Marshall's definition and define the micro and macroeconomics in nature. Then the third aspect with respect to the evaluation of your concept of this particular session, solve that the multiple choice question. The first question is dash in his principle of the economics, the 1819. My dear friends, when the year is defined at that time, you have to synchronize your mind with that, the what are that particular year where the definitions gave the different economists. So 1890 is nothing but definition given by the Dr. Alfred Marshall. Then second question is dash is the science. My dear friends, here we define that economics, then science which studies the human behavior as a relationship between ants and scarce means which have the alternative uses. So my dear friends, whether micro is defined that human behavior? No, the whole economics is a science, and which is defined that the human relationship between that the ants and the scarce means which have the alternative uses. And my dear friend, this definition given by whom? That is a Robinson's. So there is a cross verification, we can say that, with respect to your multiple choice question as well as your the definition what we studied in this session. So these three aspects are the most important for your evaluation system. Hope you learn well in this particular session. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your study.